When I went to Virginia when I was like a little kid with my family. One of the few times I've really been in the South, and we went to like a Confederate war place. I don't know.
Was it Pamplin Park?
I don't know.
Was it a recreation place?
No, it wasn't a recreation place. It was like a museum about some battle, and I forget what it was about exactly, but the name of the battle, it was like some like field that had gotten really muddy on the day of the battlefield, so like they called it the Confederates called it like the Battle of Lost Shoes. And so because I guess a lot of the soldiers, as they were marching through this like big muddy field, I think there might have been a hill they had to traverse, they were like, their shoes got stuck in the mud.
That's fucked.
And so they had like a museum thing. They had some info bits about like the glorious battle that was fought or whatever, and how like sad it was. It was a lot of like Confederate young men. I think the idea is they were like between the ages of 16 to 19. It was like a lot of recruits.
So sick.
And I remember even at the time I was, like 11 or 12, I was just like laughing in my head, like, we lost our shoes.
my ankles had been gouted from the amount of salted pork that I was eating. It's fucked.
It's all right. Eating pretzels.
Steve, you gotta make sure to have plenty of the salt for the iodine. You gotta keep the goiters down. There's a guy I follow, or I don't follow. I occasionally see on YouTube. What's his name? J. Townsend and Son or something like that. J.W. Townsend, something like that. And all he does is do like Civil War era and even before that, like kind of late 1700s, 1800s food, like cooking.
Okay.
And it's amazing to me how many channels he has, or how many views he has, because I'm like, surely, like, after a year, you've run out of recipes.
Right.
Because how much could, hardtack and swill could you possibly, like, stomach on behalf of, like, your YouTube watchers, your subscribers and shit? And it's really funny, too, because I've watched a few of his things, because I was interested in kind of, like, early American cooking and Native American cooking and shit like that, and that's why I ended up finding him. But a lot of the recipes that he does, he ends up being like, look, we followed the recipe to a T, but it just doesn't taste like something that we would recognize as appetizing the least bit.
You ever seen a book of like 1950s recipes and like everything? It's like all kinds of like weird like meat gelatins and stuff like that.
Yeah.
There's like a ton of like savory gelatin dishes and fucking weird, dude. Mm-hmm. Get the fuck out of here with that shit.
Embrace tradition.
This is what they took from us.
It's just like a single hot dog in a Jello mold.
Yeah. With like pineapple rings around it.
Oh, Jesus Christ. There's one thing that we can, sympathize the boomers for, is the fucking gastronomic horrors that they had to grow up eating. Fish boiled in milk for an hour for no discernible reason. Fucking terrible.
Just Crisco on a hot dog.
Oh. That's why they're so like haughty about they feel like they've earned being the most wealthy generation and the generation with wealth, because they're just like, listen, we just had to eat a bunch of fucking Hormel and fucking wieners in a can and stuff.
Hey,
and
man,
it's probably like there's some long-term like degenerative brain disease you get from like putting all that in your body, and the result is you end up saying like common sense solutions for a 21st century paradigm.
It's you ate out of like a lead lined can, and after that you're just like, you just need to go and ask them and tell them you're a real hard worker, and then you'll get the job. Gotta go out there and knock on some doors, pound the pavement, get out there, sport. Fucking boomers.
Now when I was a young boy, about the age of 5, my teachers told me I could be the greatest man alive. They told me I could change the world, be whatever I wanted to be. There was no one in the world like me. Every one of us was so unique. I'd not be an average man. No, sir.
Welcome back, everyone, to Eat the Rich. This is a show about our political economy, late-stage capitalism, and the millionaires, billionaires, and multinational corporations hell-bent on staving off its death rattle. I'm Dwight, and today we have with us Shane.
Good day to you.
Well, very regal. and we have Chris.
Howdy.
So I'm going to turn it over to Chris in a moment to set this up. But today, to maybe no surprise for anybody that's read the title of this, we're going to be talking about the Lincoln Project, which is fucking stunning to me because although we've talked about this talked about doing a show on them for a while, for whatever reason, even though that their stated goal was to defeat Donald Trump and that seemingly has happened, correct me if I'm wrong, guys, but like I've heard more about the Lincoln Project in the last 2 weeks than I've heard about them for the entirety of their existence. And I think that there's kind of maybe something to be pulled from that. And, it doesn't seem like they have any sense of slowing. And if anything, they're increasing their sort of salience in our politics, especially with an incoming Biden administration, which frankly, by the end of this show, you'll kind of understand why that's fucking terrifying. So to set it up, Chris, I'm going to turn it over to you. What do we got for the Lincoln Project?
Yeah. So, I mean, we're all on Twitter. If you're listening to this, I'm assuming you're all on Twitter as well. We all know the Lincoln Project. We've all seen their ads. We think they're like really epic and cool. We've seen the Lincoln Project account reply to the Donald Trump account and be like, "Look here, cupcake, Kafifi much?" Right? And then like they get like fucking 15,000 likes and everybody goes crazy. But so what we wanted to do is like talk a little bit more about like the people behind the Lincoln Project and like you were saying, like speculate a little bit about what their goals are. So yeah, the several founders, but like the main three we're gonna focus on, I guess, are Rick Wilson, George Conway, and Steve Schmidt. And I sent you guys this article earlier today. I wish I'd found it earlier because this is written by our friend Caleb Ikarma, who would have been good to have with us here, but we just found this today. But he wrote an article for Vanity Fair back in July about the Lincoln Project, and it gives. I'm going to read the first couple paragraphs of it because it does kind of set up all these guys and in their histories in like a brief way, but in a pretty good way. So this is focusing on a guy I guess we're not going to talk about so much, but a guy named Ben Howell, who's like the editor and like the guy who makes some of these ads and like in some cases does like the voiceover for him. So reading from this here, it says, prior to Donald Trump's 1 a.m. Twitter rant last month, raging against the group of rhino Republicans, loser types, at the so-called Lincoln Project, Ben Howell, a video editor and one of the top creative minds behind the Super PAC's notorious anti-Trump ads, has avoided associating himself with the group. I didn't publicly acknowledge my involvement until the president went after our Morning in America ad. That's morning like MOURNING.
Oh my God.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow. I never put that together.
Yeah. Howe told me during a phone interview referencing a viral Lincoln Project spot blasting the Trump administration's handling of the coronavirus pandemic. Once he did that, well, it had been my personal mission to have him call me a loser someday. So I was like, okay, I can't stay quiet anymore. Like the Lincoln Project's other members, Howe, the creative mind, video editor, and he said sometimes narrating voice of many of the group's ads, spent years supporting conservative policies and working on various Republican campaigns. In December, in an effort to help ensure Trump doesn't win a second term, Howe joined forces with Rick Wilson, a Defense Department appointee under then Secretary Dick Cheney, and a GOP strategist who contributed to Rudy Giuliani's winning mayoral ad campaigns. I mean, you think about like Rudy Giuliani's like tough on crime mayoral campaigns in the 90s. You know what I'm saying? Like I haven't.
Yeah.
I've read some like descriptions. I couldn't find any videos of the ads themselves, but like obviously, they're full of like racist dog whistle type stuff, tough on crime type stuff. So that's that's Rick Wilson's sort of illustrious background. George Conway, a Washington attorney and husband of top Trump aide Kellyanne Conway, who in 2017 was considered for a number of Justice Department posts before turning on the White House. Steve Schmidt, a top strategist for George W. Bush's 2004 bid, operations chief for John McCain's 2008 presidential campaign, and campaign manager for Arnold Schwarzenegger's 2006 re-election bid for California governor. And here's another guy they mentioned, John Weaver, the chief strategist for John Kasich's 2016 presidential campaign. Considered turncoats due to their shared opposition to Trump, the group united under the name of Abraham Lincoln. the first Republican president, and formed a super PAC with the explicit goal of preventing Trump from being reelected by swaying swing voters and moderate Republicans and pissing him off in the process. Here's one more little thing that's worth including. Howe first honed his skills as an ad creator for the anti-Obama Tea Party movement.
No shit.
Which in effect eventually gave us Trump and gave us QAnon and all this sort of like,
Yes.
I mean, that's really as we just talked about actually in the Patreon episode, like that is the sort of rise of this like modern reactionary movement was the reaction to Obama. So, one of these guys who is, making the ads for the, the liberal darlings at the Lincoln Project literally also did the same thing for the Tea Party. So, I mean, basically what we have here is like this like collection of like losers who like found themselves alienated from the GOP, kind of left behind in the era of Donald Trump. I mean, like some cases like fucking George Conway, who like even in like 3 years ago was like, hoping for a position in the Justice Department, was like hoping for a position in the Trump administration, and like fucking probably didn't get it, like got cucked or whatever by Donald Trump, and then like now is pissed off and mad, and like this is his way of getting back at him. So like all these guys like to come into this, like they probably already have these like, personal disliking of Donald Trump for whatever like petty personal reasons they already have, and they don't like seeing the way that I guess the way they think that he's sort of uncouth and like doesn't represent the Republican values in the way that they would like to see or whatever. So I mean, these are the guys that like went way too far into like being never Trump guys in like 2015 2016, and they just like never came back, or they couldn't come back, or they were unwilling, or for whatever reason. But I mean, these were all guys who were like run-of-the-mill Republicans, very vocally and explicitly until like 4 years ago. And now Rick Wilson, like, for instance, I remember seeing him like very early on, and like he established himself as like an anti-Trump, like a resistance hero, like one of the good Republicans. You know what I'm saying? He was on MSNBC all the time. He was on Twitter, like talking about how Trump is a traitor and like he's Putin's bitch and all that sort of stuff. Like he was one of those guys. He was like a big Russia guy, and all the libs would retweet him and loved him. And so like, like the article said, by December 2019, all these guys get together, and I think that they, I guess what we'll talk about more is they really saw this opportunity to like hitch on to Biden, and then like hopefully then if he did get elected, be able to have some influence in his administration to sort of like remake the Democratic Party. Like if the Republican Party is just going to be lost to Trump and keep moving in the direction of Trump, well then they have to try to maybe remake the Democratic Party like in the image of like the George W. Bush or the Mitt Romney or the John McCain, like the respectable Republicans. And so their promise, I mean, the mission statement of the Lincoln Project was that they're like, there's other moderate Republicans like us who hate Donald Trump, and like we can appeal to, if you give us money, we can make ads and we can appeal to them, and we can peel voters away from Trump's base, and we can get them to vote for Biden and all this sort of stuff, like college educated Republicans, blah blah blah, all that sort of stuff. And then like not only did that not happen, but I mean Trump like rallied his base. Trump got a few million more votes in 2020 than he did in 2016. So and he's kind of sort of work towards the Lincoln Party's goal. And not only that, they lost seats in the House. They lost seats in the House, and they didn't win a majority in the Senate. I mean, they really they didn't win any Republicans over, and it's very obvious. It's very obvious.
I was just gonna say, Trump also won a higher percentage of Republicans in 2020 than he did in 2016.
And he
93 to 90%, I think.
Right, and he increased his voting share among white women, which is like one of the demographics that the Lincoln Project hoped to convert back over, like women who were like fed up with Trump's misogyny or whatever, right? And like so, like credulous liberals, you're absolutely like bewitched by the idea, like the concept of a good Republican, like handed over $67 million in donations to these guys for like television ads and like a billboard. They had a billboard in Times Square, like a light up billboard, like a big one, a fucking Times Square billboard for like months, right? And like with like a picture of Ivanka and Jared Kushner about like the COVID deaths. But like, who are you winning over in fucking, like, think about how expensive that is.
Right.
And to put it in the middle of, like in Midtown Manhattan, like you're not
in the middle of a pandemic. It's not like you're just getting the same foot traffic or whatever. Yeah. Yeah.
But even the foot traffic that you're getting, I mean,
right.
How, like, why are you spending that on, a solidly blue New York City? So, but that, that gets to the root of like what these ads were, right? Is that they were just like we were just discussing on the Patreon episode that they were all this whole approach of like these centrists is to like or like and like the whole approach of like the Biden campaign in general was like just like we're not Donald Trump, we're the anti-Trump, and like these ads that the Lincoln Project made, like that's all they were anti-Trump. Trump is a liar and he's a racist, a traitor, and he's gay with Putin and all that, all that sort of stuff that they say, that but providing no alternative, right? And the entire appeal is just, I'm not Donald Trump, but like you're not enlightening anybody. Everybody knows who Donald Trump is. I mean, Donald Trump, I think in many ways is like more authentic as a politician than any of them. And I don't mean like authenticity in like an honesty way, but in like he's authentic in that like he just is what he is, and what he is. Like he loves to lie. He loves to be racist.
He loves it.
He loves to be racist, and he loves to do crimes, and he loves to do deals, and everybody knows that, and that's what he is. And like you either look at that and you like it or you don't, but you're not like you spending fucking millions of dollars, tens of millions of dollars on ads saying this in 2020. It's pointless. It's the same. It's a do-over of 2016, and obviously that didn't work. And so that is what the Lincoln Project is, and that is where they got their money from, from liberals. And I guess I'm gonna throw it over to you, Dwight. I guess you want to talk a little bit about one of these fucking assholes. Who you got, George Conway?
Yeah, George Conway. Look, again, I think it's productive for us to kind of do a dive into who these people are in particular. And, not that it's particularly productive to point out hypocrisy, but I think since this seems to be an ongoing force and, in no sense of slowing, I think we really need to understand who these characters are. So George Conway is a pretty interesting character to me. Honestly, there's not much. He's not as bombastic as some of the other guys, like especially Rick Wilson. George Conway, I certainly got the impression from him that he's a pretty clever guy, pretty deft at what he does, and only recently kind of found his voice in the public sphere. He was very much a background sort of guy, especially with in the shadow in recent years, in the shadow of his wife Kellyanne Conway, which we'll talk about how they met later. Which fucking it's so bad. So about George Conway, it's not that important, but a little bit of background for him. He grew up, he's a Boston boy. His dad was a defense contractor at Raytheon. Our friends at Raytheon, sponsor of the show, Raytheon.
Missiles that care. Is that what Elron Mexico said?
Yes. He was a Harvard boy. He went to Harvard, and he went to Yale Law School. And interestingly, I'm going to get into the kind of what I think are some of the defining milestones of his career that were leading up to him being, in the Lincoln Project. But what's funny about it is that, I think he paints a picture of himself as not being a political operative. But what I allege is, he is one of the most entrenched political operatives, I think, in like the kind of traditional sense than any of them. Because, Rick Wilson, Steve Schmidt, they are politicians. They're the kind of the background guys for the politicians, but George Conway has done a lot to influence policy, which we'll talk about here. So he joined a law firm in 1988 called Wachtel, Lipton, Rosen and Katz, and they are an interesting law firm. Not just, they handle securities, mergers and acquisitions, that sort of thing, but they are and I didn't even know that this was a measure, but on a per partner basis, they are the most profitable law firm in the world.
Interesting.
I guess there's a measure called, which is like, profits per partner, and they are the most profitable per total amount of partners that they have of any law firm in the world. And so, he went to Harvard, he went to Yale, his dad was a defense contractor. He obviously, at the least grew up middle class. I don't get the sense that he came in from any, inherited wealth, but, definitely middle class. But he, probably did as good as you can do not coming from a lot of wealth. You know what I'm saying? Huge 6-figure checks and stuff every year, big bonuses from this law firm. What's very interesting, though, is the specific where he made his name specifically in the beginning of his, let's just say, political career, because he's done certainly a lot with corporate law, but he was an advising lawyer in the civil lawsuit against President Bill Clinton on behalf of Paula Jones. And if you'll remember, this was part of the, not specifically part of the big impeachment fiasco, but this was a big portion the kind of popular case against Bill Clinton was that, he's a lech, he's disgusting, he can't keep it in his pants, he's running all over Little Rock, harassing women, and I'm going to assert that all of that is true.
Sure, of course.
Because he definitely is a lech and a weirdo and a freak and a psycho and, a misogynist at the least. But interestingly, and I'm going to read something here from an article from 2000, from March of the year 2000, called Impeachment's Little Elves. And this was in Salon, the publication Salon. And the sublead here is how conservative lawyers used Matt Drudge and Kathleen Willey to scuttle a deal in the Paula Jones harassment case. I don't want to spend too much time on this because we have a lot to get through. But ultimately, where George Conway comes in, essentially, is the primary lawyers in this case, who were the lawyers by the name of Davis and Camerata. They were, let's just say, trying to push towards a settlement, but there were some other people in the background, and George Conway was one of them, that wanted to have this be a larger way to take down the American president, to take down the Democratic president. And so I'm just going to read an excerpt here, and it says, the worst mistake Davis and Camerata made was to confide all of those sensitive details to their behind-the-scenes advisors, a little group of committed conservatives led by Philadelphia lawyer Jerome Marcus. It was Marcus's name that appeared most often on the timesheets kept by Jones's lawyers, although they frequently spoke and communicated with George Conway in New York. Both men valued the assistance donated pro bono by the group, though they had believed from the beginning that Conway, Marcus, and Porter all were motivated by more by hatred of Bill Clinton than by any desire to rescue Paula Jones. It goes on to say that according to Davis, both Conway and Marcus knew about Catherine Willey, and they were certainly understood that the public exposure of her allegations would badly complicate any prospects of a settlement. Again, this was a civil case between Paula Jones and Bill Clinton. He simply expected them to keep their mouths shut. There were many times back then that there were both on the phone with us on conference calls, he said. We talked as lawyers, they did good, workmanlike work, and we just assumed that they would keep all the information confidential. Working with us, they were ethically required to do so, just as if they were attorneys of record on the case. But there's another character in this whole fiasco, which is a very interesting name, which I did not expect to see, which was Ann Coulter. Ann Coulter was, let's just say, became a buddy of George Conway's.
Okay.
And it says here, they're talking about, I'm skipping around a little bit, but it says here, an outspoken enemy of the Clintons who consulted on political strategy with Conway, Coulter admitted that they had given various journalists the story of the, quote, distinguishing characteristic of Clinton's penis, supposedly observed by Jones when he exposed himself to her in 1991. The reason, as she eventually explained to Isikoff, was we were terrified that Jones would settle. It was contrary to our purpose of bringing down the president. Says later still, in confirming that leak to the Hartford Courant, she remarked that her work with George Conway and his colleagues amounted to a, quote, small, intricately knit right-wing conspiracy. And I'd like that clarified, she said to the Hartford Courant. Coulter claims that she helped Conway and Marcus with legal research in the Jones case, but according to Gil Davis, neither he nor Camerata, these are the two primary lawyers for Paula Jones, ever heard of her while they were working on the lawsuit. Which to me is, if I'm hearing that, I'm reading like, yeah, there was like deeper political leanings at work that were, machinations at work here. So Ann Coulter is interesting. I didn't expect to see her in all this, but I'm going to skip now quickly to how did George Conway meet Kellyanne? At the time, her maiden name was Kellyanne Fitzpatrick. It was Ann Coulter. And I'm reading here from a Business Insider. Yeah, amazing. And I'm reading here from a Business Insider thing. I'm reading from something called the Washingtonian. And this was from earlier this year in May. And it says, in August 1999, George gets his friend Ann Coulter to introduce him to conservative it girl Kellyanne Fitzpatrick. How do you like that? How do you like that? I know. Oh man, wait till you hear. Oh man, I have such a good suggestion of the closing music for this.
Okay.
Oh man, have you ever seen the Kellyanne Conway stand up? routine.
Wait, that sounds familiar. Maybe a few years ago, maybe early.
For the listener, Chris shot up in his chair.
Yeah.
Maybe it would be appropriate to put that in right here. Just a little excerpt of her stand-up that she did for this conservative thing.
But everybody's wondering about my leg. It's the first thing they ask. Kellyanne, what happened to your leg? I'm like, well, everybody heard I was going to be in this comedy show, and they're like, break a leg. So I did. And you think blondes are dumb.
I feel like this is old, right?
Yes, it's from the 90s.
Okay, yeah. Just her worst joke.
Just her worst shit. It's all bad. It's so bad. So August 1999, George Conway asks Ann Coulter to introduce him to Kellyanne Fitzpatrick after seeing her on the cover of a Society magazine, whatever the fuck that means. 2001, they are wedded in Philadelphia.
Okay.
They're wedded in Philadelphia. They move into Trump World Tower.
Okay.
Which was one of Donald Trump's buildings. I think it's next to like the UN. It's like on 44th and 1st or some shit like that. This is so weird. And again, they like had this shtick early on. December 2005, George and Kellyanne launch a blog for National Review called Reconcilable Differences. The tagline, 2 Conways, 2 takes.
Okay.
The Bush administration is the most politically and substantively inept that the nation has ever had in a quarter of a century. Hers, when pondering why George, a fairly even-tempered fellow, feels so strongly, I'm reminded of a line by Brie Van de Kamp, the fastidious perfectionist widow of ABC's Desperate Housewives. She says, the opposite of love isn't hate, it's indifference. And if you hate me, that means you still care and we're still connected. What a fucking
This
time
is like
capsule.
it's like the fucking
What a
it's
time
the
capsule.
ridiculous like James Carville, Mary Matlin.
Right.
shtick.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
which is just so
Yes.
insufferable and has been for years.
Now this is the nexus.
Shane likes
this
that.
is like
Yeah.
Do you know like you remember there's like an episode in The Simpsons where like Homer goes back in time and accidentally squashes a mosquito and it like changes perpetuity forever after that? Like people have fucking lizard tongues and shit.
Sure.
This is like a moment here that so much would have changed if it weren't for this interaction and the crossing of paths in human history. April 2006, George Conway helps Donald Trump with a condo board issue arguing against removing Trump's name from the World Tower facade.
Of course.
Uh-huh. The most dangerous fascist America has ever fucking experienced. So it says, impressed, Trump invites George to join the board of the condo association. George Conway declines, but he was like, maybe Kellyanne would be interested, and she joins the board. And that's how they fucking met, how Trump and Kellyanne got together.
No, and honestly, and Trump probably made some comments like, "Wow, Kellyanne really wears the pants in that household, doesn't she?" And like he's had like a personal grudge ever since then against him. And then like Kellyanne Conway gets a job in the administration and he doesn't. And he's just this is like a 20-year long like personal grudge against Donald Trump.
It would be really cool if we had some sort of like way that we knew how Donald Trump felt about that at the time. And we do.
Okay.
Because he wrote a letter to George Conway to thank him for and I'm literally looking at like the fucking printed letterhead here shit and says, oh, it's kind of cute. Just there's no like Trump organization or anything. At the top, his letterhead just says Donald John Trump. And it reads here. I'm not going to do the voice. I might.
No,
do the voice.
Do the voice. Come on.
Dear George, I wanted to thank you for your wonderful assistance. It's so I'm just gonna read it straight because you're gonna because
you still hear
it's
it.
so good.
Yeah.
You ready?
Yeah.
Okay, here we go.
All right.
I wanted to thank you for your wonderful assistance in ridding Trump World Tower of some very bad people. It's so Trump. It says, again, this is 2006. It says, what I was most impressed with was how quickly you were able to comprehend a very bad situation. In any event, the building has now been normalized, and the who fucking says?
And everything is very good.
This is so good. This is so good. And the employees are no longer doing menial tasks, etc., for our former board members. Life goes on in a much more positive way. With an exclamation point. Again, I very much appreciate your assistance. It's actually kind of sweet. Sincerely, Donald. P.S. And you truly have a great voice. Certainly not a bad asset for a top trial lawyer. Oh, wow.
I just imagine, mid 2000s Trump just like rating lawyers' voices in his head. He's just got, it's the only like permanent thought he has is like in the background. And they fluctuate day to day. It's like, I guess George Conway gets up there now. He's number 5.
So this is, I'll just explain this. Again, this is from the Washingtonian, giving like a breakdown of the timeline of the Kellyanne and George's relationship. But it says here, May 2006 through June 2016, Kellyanne is a go-to pollster and advisor for right-wingers such as Newt Gingrich and Mike Pence. She runs her first poll for Trump in 2013 when he considers a New York gubernatorial run. George is a partner, again, at the law firm Wachtell, Lipton, Rosen & Katz in New York, handling securities and corporate litigation. And this is something that I wanted to pay attention to. It says in 2010, he argues at the Supreme Court for the first time. And this, this is something that's kind of a larger conversation that I think we should have in general. But like corporate law and securities law is definitely not like a sexy thing for the left to be interested in and talk about. It's not like something that's just, let's just say, cut and dry, like human rights or immigration law, all that sort of shit. But this was I think one of the most consequential Supreme Court decisions when it came to an issue which I'll just briefly explain, because again, I'm not a fucking lawyer. I can't believe they gave me a fucking degree just for my undergrad shit. But like, this was an extremely consequential case when it came to who can hold American companies accountable from abroad. So again, George Conway was the lead litigator for this suit that was brought in front of the fucking Supreme Court called Morrison versus National Australia Bank. And the gist of it was,
what was the year of this?
So it was litigated in 2010.
Okay.
In front of the Supreme Court, but it had gone into it was decided on in the Second Court of Appeals, and that actually led to the recusal of, I think it was Justice Sotomayor, because she was part of that. Yes, she recused herself because she had been involved in the case in the Second Circuit. But basically the gist of this was there was a company in Florida called Homeside Lending, and basically they cooked the books, and they said that they had like $2 billion more than they did. And that was consequential because earlier on in 1998, that company in Florida was bought by National Australia Bank, which is another, mortgage. It was a huge bank, and they bought this mortgage servicing company in Florida. And the reason that was consequential was because they had the Australian bank had to write down these huge losses because of this fraud. And the lawsuit came because the foreign company, the Australian company, sued to say like, hey, this wasn't right, and we want to hold, the American portion of this accountable. And so this should come to, ringing in the ears of American capital to say, can foreign entities hold U.S. entities accountable for their securities fraud? Again, because the National Australia Bank was listed on an Australian exchange. So the question is, can foreign entities hold American entities accountable for their fraud? And the opinion of George Conway and his law firm and their interest that they represented was no, that you should not be able to, as a foreigner, hold American companies accountable for securities fraud. And it was a unanimous decision to agree with George Conway. Stevens, Scalia, Kennedy, Thomas, Ginsburg, Breyer, Alito, and Sotomayor all upheld that. And the result of which, interestingly, now it's set an enormous precedent, a constitutional precedent to say, and again, lawyers, if you have any critique of how I'm presenting this, please DM Shane and Chris to tell them about it. But, the aftermath of this, interestingly, was that, you can't do it anymore. You can't hold an American company accountable as a foreigner if there's security fraud going on. It had some other implications with the Dodd-Frank Wall Street Reform and Consumer Protection Act. And then there was some other shit with a Goldman Sachs guy who actually did fraud, tried to use it as an opportunity for him not to be held accountable for it. But I think that this, again, if we're talking about like the larger implications of who the Lincoln Project is. The reason why I'm stressing this so much is that George Conway, although he, isn't as bombastic and as front-facing as some of the other guys in the founders of the Lincoln Project, George Conway understands intimately the conservative project.
Yes. George
Conway understands, the class war, the labor, the war between labor and capital, and he is deftly and very cleverly and done a very good job of arguing in front of, the highest machinations of legality in the United States that capital should reign supreme. And he understands this. And of course, and again, him going back to being an advisor on the Paula Jones case. Why would a corporate lawyer be interested in that?
Right.
Again, he wasn't even contracted as the main lawyers. He was an advising lawyer with fucking Ann Coulter, who became a buddy. This isn't somebody that's like just in the background like an aw shucks lawyer. I'm just doing my law shit. No, he very clearly, from the stuff that we've learned about him today, he understands the larger conservative project to take power away from public institutions that are meant to safeguard us, to put power in the hands of the largest and most powerful corporate entities on Earth in human fucking civilization. And that is what he is bringing to the Lincoln Project. I think, for as far as his recent shit, what do we know about him now? I mean, he's tweeting at Trump, saying, my fucking wife's boss is a bozo and an idiot and whatever, all that shit.
Well, he's getting like owned by his daughter on TikTok, which is really funny. Also,
I kind of didn't want to bring it up, but I because this child is like whatever, making a name for himself or for herself. But like, if you're I'll just say this: if you're growing up in a house, full of like some of the most like the deftest grifters that there are out there, like you're gonna learn it yourself. Like that was literally the shtick. Again, the two Conways or whatever, and here she is, Claudia Conway, their oldest of four, making a name for herself on TikTok, being like, capitalism sucks and all this shit. Like,
look out for the show that will come in the Biden administration. It'll be called The Conways, and it'll be available on whatever the conglomerate fucking single monopoly streaming services that everybody is forced to watch because 90% of the population is sick. And
you'll be able to watch it when you unlock it from the chip that goes from your vaccine.
It'll be on Quibi.
You'll have to.
I'm imagining. I think it's funny too that like as much as Fox News made Trump, the way he's like sabotaging them or like trying so much to sabotage them, like right now on the way out the door, like they're losing viewers like a lot. They're losing a lot of viewers, and like I've been watching all these like Stop the Steal Facebook groups, and like all these people they're like going to like moving to One America News.
Oh yeah.
Right. So I don't know. I was thinking about this like vision of like, what if like in the same way that the Republican Party just continues to move right and like the Democratic Party just continues to trail along right after it? What if like 4 years from now, like Newsmax and like OAN are like Fox News is out of business and like OAN and like Newsmax are like just like hardcore explicit like far right like Nazi programming, and then like MSNBC and like CNN, and like that's where like Tucker Carlson and Sean Hannity went to. That's now like the reasonable center.
So yeah, that's I think we should move on, but I think that the takeaway for George Conway is, look, he understands very intimately. He's been a lifelong Republican. He understands very intimately what the larger kind of broadly right conservative movement is all about, and he has been working his entire life to advance that.
Well done, my friend.
Oh, listen, nice. It's an honor to serve at the pleasure of the Patreon subscribers. So, Steve Schmidt. Hit us with it.
I mean, I think the best way to start off with this is to pick up on what you were just saying, Dwight, and talking about like Conway and stuff, is that like with Schmidt, as far as I can tell by looking into him, and I assume it's the same way with a lot of these guys of the Lincoln Project, right? Like, they are not capital, but the phrase that you've used earlier in the show is like essentially they're agents of capital, right? They're obviously very directly agents of the Republican Party, or they have been for most of their lives. You know, I was trying to look up the financial information about Schmidt. The best thing I could find, which again I'm not sure if this is entirely true, but it estimated his net worth at around like $2 million. You know, which is still a huge amount of money. You know, maybe less than some of the other people that we've covered on the show, but I think like his involvement with this project and obviously like where the plans are for it to go, you know, signify like that it's worth talking about these guys, right? So with Schmidt, let's see, bio here. He was born in 1970 in Jersey. You know, from an early point in his life, it seems like in high school he was doing some kind of volunteer work and political campaigning, although it seems when he was in high school it was for like a Democrat. He goes to the University of Delaware in 1988. He's a frat guy. He's an ROTC. This is when he switches over and he becomes a Republican. And
ROTC will get you like that.
Interestingly, he did not finish college, at least at this time. He was there for, it seems like 5 years, maybe, and he didn't finish his degree. And I want to circle back around to, like, what that signals and what that was about. But through the process of being involved in, you know, like, young Republican groups or whatever through college and those other ties, he ends up still getting jobs. And so in the 90s, he works on a bunch of different campaigns. So this is at the point in his life where he's like in his 20s, right? And so he's working on a bunch of different Republican campaigns, both state and national level. You know, all these different kinds of little positions like attorney general for the state, you know, state representative, and then like, you know, somebody who's actually trying to get into Congress or, you know, the Senate, all failed. Every single one of them failed.
Really?
And somehow he kept getting jobs on these. And these were like big jobs. These were like communication director, campaign manager, right? And nonetheless, all the campaigns he works on fails. And then somehow he continues to fail upward, right? And so by the time it hits 2000, so at this point he's 30, he becomes the communications director of the House Committee on Energy and Commerce. By the next year, in 2001, becomes the spokesman of the NRCC, which is the Republican equivalent of the DNCC, if you've ever gotten those emails or whatever. It's, again, it's like a big, like, lobby political action group thing that's associated with the party that's trying to get, like, Republicans elected. So he becomes a spokesperson. The next year, he becomes the communications director by 2002. And again, we're going to circle back around to, like, how did this guy who essentially worked on all these failed campaigns get this job? But things take an interesting turn when finally in 2004, he joins the Bush administration as deputy assistant to the president and counselor to Vice President Dick Cheney. Chris, you kind of mentioned this, that he worked here in the Bush administration.
I'm sorry. Right off the bat, this person belongs in the Hague.
Right, exactly.
I'm looking up. I'm curious. Keep going. I'm Googling. Unless you know it. I'm wondering if Bush had a nickname for him. I'm looking it up right now.
Oh, most certainly.
Scott, is it Schmitty?
There is a nickname for him that's going to crop up in just a second, but I don't know if it's a Bush nickname. It's more of a lame operator name. But anyway, so he's working in the Bush administration, and then in that capacity as whatever advisor, you know, bullshit title that he has, he ends up working on the 2004 re-election campaign for Bush. And in this capacity, he's working under Karl Rove in the so-called war room for re-election. And so it's kind of unclear. Some of the details are a little murky here because, again, as I said, you know, none of these guys are like super big or famous. As you were saying, Dwight, you know, some of them are kind of more background guys, like, although that changes for Schmidt a little later on, but like, they're also like pretty boring, you know, like they have these like lame, like little stories. They're not as colorful as some of the other characters we talk about on the show. But so in searching for information about what he did working in the Bush administration and on the Bush re-election campaign, I came across a article from Newsweek from 2008. And that at that point, he's working on McCain's presidential campaign. Okay, so I'm going to read bits from this because this is really funny to me. This gives like a kind of overview of the last, 5 or 6 years or whatever of this guy's career. And again, I thought it was amusing. So I'll read some selections from here. So this piece is called Steve Schmidt, The Man Behind McCain by Holly Bailey from 2008. And it goes, if you want to really irritate Steve Schmidt, and seeing that he's 6 feet, 225 pounds, and can show a flash of temper, it's not recommended. Just compare him to Karl Rove. By the way, I recommend look up Steve Schmidt. and just
Yeah.
get a picture of him in his mind when it says this. The man in charge of John McCain's day-to-day presidential campaign is tired of reporters saying he's Rove's protege, the implication being that he is willing to do anything to win. For the record, the two men go back only to 2004, when Schmidt, then a 34-year-old consultant, was hired to run George W. Bush's re-election war room. Schmidt learned then what it means to play rough when your candidate is behind. Now, 4 years later, he is back at it. McCain is down in the polls, and the candidate has struggled to get a consistent message across to voters. When that happened to Bush in 2000 and 2004, Rove unleashed meaner speeches and uglier campaign ads. Under Schmidt's direction, McCain is doing the same. This is, by the way, this is from October of 2008, so this is like a month before the election when the article's written. In recent weeks, as Barack Obama has pulled further ahead, the new Newsweek poll has Obama up by 11 points, Schmidt has ordered a barrage of negative ads attacking the Democratic candidate. McCain's once sunny town hall script has turned darker. Sarah Palin, whom Schmidt helped persuade McCain to pick as his running mate, is playing her Schmidt-sanctioned pit bull role with great success. She often works crowds into an anti-Obama frenzy. During a Palin speech in Florida last week, a man in the audience allegedly shouted, "Kill him!" The Secret Service is investigating.
Seems so quaint now.
Yeah, but like this is a point I want to return to with the Palin thing, but it's not like super highlighted here. But the point here is that it was Schmidt's idea for McCain to have Palin as the running mate. He was the one who pushed it forward. Returning to the article. In GOP circles, Schmidt's nickname is the Bullet, both for his gleaming shaved head and the way he relentlessly seeks out his target. Again, look up a picture of him. You can fill in the dots yourself.
You've seen a picture of Rick Wilson from Twitter. It's the same guy. They have the same. They have the same. They've got the fucking the shaved head and the fucking absurd goatee. Like it's your standard Republican pundit look.
Shane, you're implying that he's a bit Zaftig.
Shane's being ableist.
He's a big boy. Schmidt is a big boy. If that's a bullet, it's like a fucking 40. It's a cannonball, okay? And then it says, when he can, he lets off steam at the gym by practicing ultimate fighting techniques.
No way.
His special...
Well, I don't know how much fighting he does because he's never won anything. Like, I don't know why he would do it.
Exactly. His specialty is message control, something McCain, a meandering speaker, has worked to master. Schmidt's signature of practice is to pick a simple message and repeat it day after day until it begins to sink in with the public. Just want to point out here, that's like Politics 101. That's not like a masterful gesture.
Exactly.
In Obama's case, it's that he is an empty celebrity who lacks the gravitas to lead. The rock star ad comparing Obama to Britney Spears and Paris Hilton, that was all Schmidt. I don't know if you guys remember that ad. I do.
No.
But it's just called Celebrity. And it was one that was basically trying to attack Obama because he was like, relatively young and, had swooping rhetoric and he was very like popular to basically be like, he's the Britney Spears of politics. And there's all kinds of weird fucked up coded things that go into that. Back to this article, but unlike Rove, who appears to relish and even play up his Prince of Darkness rep, Schmidt, who declined to be interviewed for this story, seems genuinely pained that this is the way things have turned out. He isn't pure or dreamy-eyed idealist. He was hired to win, and he's shown that he's not averse to punching or getting elastic with facts. In politics, no prize goes to the noble loser. We'll return to that later. That doesn't mean he has to like being known as a practitioner of the political dark arts. Schmidt came to work for McCain with a very different vision of what big league politics could be, and it didn't look anything like the nasty and brutish campaign he now finds himself working like hell not to lose. I'm going to skip here, and I'm just going to get to the point now where it's like talking about his previous experience with Rove and stuff. So after Bush won in 2004, Schmidt took a job at the White House working for Dick Cheney. The vice president had the worst persona in politics. His popularity was in the low 20s, and Schmidt was given the unenviable task of giving the dour, secretive vice president a personality makeover. It's gratifying to work for somebody who doesn't measure accomplishment by the temporary state of public opinion polls, Schmidt told the New York Times in November 2005. But privately, says a friend who declined to be quoted talking about personal conversations, Schmidt found the job maddening. The vice president ignored Schmidt's attempts to get him better treatment in the press. Schmidt, this friend says, was mystified that Cheney seemingly didn't care at all about his image. So one of two things is happening here, if you pay attention to what was just said there, which was that Cheney obviously was like deeply, deeply unlikable, right? Had no like charisma or whatever. Schmidt is saying now that he's working for him, it's actually relieving to do that. And then people on the inside are saying Schmidt was actually upset to, having to deal with somebody who was like so disinterested in image. So there's no way that this makes Schmidt looks good. Because either he's like fucking lying, right, on the one hand, or he's like image obsessed, which are like neither of these things are, again, the supposed like these like high ground moral values that he'll go on to go about. One thing that this article doesn't mention, and this is why I asked you about that Supreme Court case earlier, Dwight, is that after the re-election stuff, Schmidt continued to work in the White House for the next 2 years. And he was the chief strategist from the White House responsible for the Supreme Court nominations of Alito and Roberts, which were appointed by Bush in 2005 and 2006. So again, I mean, there's a million lines of hypocrisy you can do to this. They're still on the fucking Supreme Court, and that decision or any other. That's why I was asking you what year it was. But anyway, and then to continue with this guy's bio, so after he's working with the Bush White House, apparently he's like unsatisfied with working directly with Cheney because he doesn't like him or whatever. That's apparently the story. In this article, it says, when Maria Shriver, wife of California Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger, asked Schmidt if he would run his 2006 re-election campaign, Schmidt accepted immediately. Arnold's image was badly in need of repair. His bullying, confrontational style had worn thin, and he was sinking in the polls. Schmidt forbade Schwarzenegger from driving his beloved Hummer in the middle of an energy crisis and told him to stop picking public fights with his political opponents just for the fun of it. The consultant recast the governor as a reformer eager to work with Democrats to revive the state's economy. Schmidt's message, which the campaign repeated relentlessly, cooperation. Schwarzenegger won with 56% of the vote, bolstered by large numbers of moderate Democrats. Schmidt's own politics are sometimes to the left of his party. His only sister is gay, and during the GOP convention this summer, he gave a speech to log cabin Republicans, urging them to keep pushing the party to endorse gay rights. I admire your organization, he said. Keep fighting for what you believe, because the day is going to come. So, let me jump here. So then it goes, after that, he's like, he kind of takes a break, apparently, for like a year or two. That, again, that's his own story. It's hard to tell how much of this is true. The rest of this article gets into how then he starts working for McCain. But I want to read just a little bit more to wrap up here about, like, this is, again, him now in the present. This is like a month before the election in 2008. He's working on McCain's campaign. Schmidt often blames the media for McCain's troubles, saying reporters have turned on his boss while giving Obama a free ride. In a conference call with reporters last month, he lit into the New York Times, which had written a story detailing Rick Davis's ties to Fannie Mae. Let's be clear and honest with each other, Schmidt bellowed, his anger rising with every syllable. Whatever the New York Times once was, it is today, not by any standard, a journalistic organization. It is a pro-Obama advocacy organization that every day attacks the McCain campaign, attacks Governor Palin, and excuses Senator Obama. The failing New York Times, people.
Playing the hits, man. The classics.
When McCain's poll numbers began sinking after the collapse of the financial markets, the campaign, at Schmidt's urging, took on a harder edge. McCain and Obama have now settled into a mean-spirited and depressingly familiar tit-for-tat, blah, blah, blah. Here's a good bit. On Friday, McCain, perhaps feeling things had gotten out of hand, called Obama a decent person and told an audience they had no need to fear if he were elected. The line drew loud boos from the Republican crowd.
Can I just pause that for a second?
If I may, too, and like people, I think this is, I know the incident you're talking about, and like people, this is one thing that like people have like liberals have like posted this over the past couple years on Twitter as like an example of like a good and decent and honorable Republican. And what I believe you're talking about is when McCain is doing that like town hall or whatever, and that like deranged old woman like shuffles over and like gets the microphone and she's like, I don't trust Obama. He's an Arab. I don't. And then McCain's response is like, no. He's a decent person, which is like that's the opposite of Muslim, is a decent person.
Exactly.
Yeah. No, he couldn't be that. He's decent. And like the people like hark back to that as like this like great moment of like putting aside political differences and being reasonable and being a decent Republican.
But, it was thinly veiled Islamophobia.
Of course,
but to put it in the context that this article doesn't, right? Which is that it shows that Schmidt is the one behind the nasty attack ads, right?
Yes.
So, in part, he's the person responsible for drumming up the fear-mongering in that crowd. And so it
Drill,
has
baby, drill.
It has nothing to do with what his fucking, personal feelings are or whatever. If he's doing that to win and then it has that effect, he's responsible.
Again, laying the groundwork for what ended up being the thing that he's now rallying against.
Right. Exactly.
Right.
So,
it was that whole Obama is a secret Kenyan Muslim that that was what got Donald Trump into the political arena in the first place.
Exactly.
That was what made him a political force.
Yeah, so then, obviously, I mean, the rest of the article goes on, and it's about how Schmidt feels bad, or whatever, about, he's not having a fun time now that he's fucking losing.
He's always been losing.
So then, McCain loses, so another big loss for Schmidt's career. And so, besides his brief tenure in the Bush administration and then, working with Schwarzenegger, at this point, this guy has had, 20 years of failure, more or less, with two, notable exceptions. But the rest of it is total failure. So, where does he go afterwards, right? He kind of goes, back to his regular life. I'm sure he's made, a bunch of money. It was hard to find this period exactly in terms of what he was up to. He kind of resurfaces in 2012. And the reason he does is that HBO made a film in 2012 called Game Change.
Yes.
That had Julianne Moore in it playing Sarah Palin. And it was all about the Sarah Palin, vice presidency. And in the film, Woody Harrelson plays Steve Schmidt. And the narrative that they take there, which it seems to be the true
Woody
one.
Harrelson, incredibly charismatic and likable.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah.
But so it plays this up where basically Steve Schmidt is the guy on McCain's team who is we have to get Sarah Palin. And then I think at the end of the movie, I haven't seen it, or if I did, I saw it a long time ago and I don't remember.
I remember it. I saw it.
I guess at the end of the movie, Woody Harrelson playing Steve Schmidt is oh, we made a mistake in picking Sarah Palin. She's actually hurting the ticket. And so it kind of reframes this whole narrative, right, in terms of him being somehow, penitent or something, feeling bad for what he had done. And so there's a New York Times piece here I want to read from 2012, which the title says it all: "A Career Resurrected After McCain and Palin" by Adam Nagorny. And I'm just going to read a very small bit of it here. So this is interviewing Schmidt. It's a profile on him now that the movie's come out and he's kind of trying to reemerge and remake himself in the public eye. Mr. Schmidt said he has not spoken with Miss Palin since the night Mr. McCain conceded. His criticism of her has been a defining theme of his post-2008 years, in contrast to Mr. McCain, who has praised her repeatedly. If I knew 2 days before what I knew 2 days later, I would have handcuffed myself to the truck to prevent him from leaving the compound, Mr. Schmidt said, recalling the moment that Mr. McCain left to announce his selection. I guess the evidence of that is the trauma I still have 4 years later. She absolutely should not be president. No way, no how, he said. I've watched her on the public stage over the past 4 years. There's been zero effort, to improve any of her obvious deficiencies. Today, Mr. Schmidt seems to be trying to walk a line between taking responsibility and taking all the blame, as was clear on a recent day with him riding around the lake in his SUV, wandering a pristine beach, puttering around his office, and enjoying a long, wine-soaked dinner as the sun set over the lake. My regret is I should have been the guy to say, "Stop, it's too risky," he said, walking slowly up the road to his home, as opposed to the guy saying, "Let's take the risk, we have to win this." How does that make him feel? Terrible, 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 he said. I have a level of regret that is hard to put into words. The notion that I would be a participant in a decision that, had events turned out the other way, this person would have been a national command authority, I am sick about it. Even here, a place that radiates tranquility with a life of golf and boat rides on the lake with family, Mr. Schmidt does not seem a man at peace. Consider him on gay marriage. I would find it difficult to be involved in an effort that I think disenfranchises people from a fundamental right, he said. How do you work with people who are opposed to marriage equality? I don't want to do it. That said, I understand the hypocrisy in it, because I'm probably going to vote for Mitt Romney at the end of the day, he said. It doesn't make sense. You try to compartmentalize stuff in your head. So,
what an idiot.
Just to recap
brilliant.
here.
Great stuff.
4 years after his big fucking failure, right? Now he gets a profile in the New York Times. And again, just reading from this, his life is the fucking dream. He does nothing all day. He gets to play golf and go on the boat on the lake. He's rich off of all of these, again, supposed mistakes he made, that he feels so very, very bad for. The other thing that I didn't want to get into just out of time, but like the whole like kind of framing of this article is that like he was invited to the red carpet premiere of The Game Change, the HBO film.
That's right.
And he was like really happy about the film. He was like friendly with Woody Harrelson. So this was like the beginning of the resuscitation of him, right? In sort of media circles, first via the film, but then like you get this profile, you know, in the Times. Okay, so like, and there's the obvious hypocrisy too that I don't want to hammer too bad. Dwight, you're always the one looking out for the Zoomers here. I don't know
what up,
if
Zoomers?
Zoomers remember who Sarah Palin is, or like
probably not
know who she is, but she was the
Everybody
governor of
knows
Alaska,
who Sarah Palin is.
and like, you know, she was the VP in 2008, and she was like in a lot of ways the same kind of framing of Trump, maybe a little less aggressive in it, but she was the like, you know, like I'm the fucking hardcore, you know, like bear mom, and I hunt and I do all these, you know,
and I'm an outsider.
Yeah, exactly. I'm the Washington outsider, and I'm like gonna upend things or whatever. So that whole strategy, that rhetorical strategy, is one that Schmidt pushed for, that now he's apparently contrite about. Okay, so what happens then after this? After 2012, now he kind of has this moment back in the spotlight. He actually finally goes back to school and completes his degree at University of Delaware in 2013. So now he's actually a college graduate.
Good for him.
I guess in his 40s. It's never too late. He gets like a position in 2014 at the University of Chicago as like a fellow at their School of like Political Science. But this is like the beginning of like the rolling out of his resurgence. You know, as like a former GOP strategist and consultant, he now gets like media spots. He's on the news. He's like a pundit every once in a while. One funny one that I stumbled upon is that he got on the board of this thing called Just Capital. And I thought you would love this, Dwight in particular. I thought you'd like this. So I was trying to look it up. I was trying to figure out like when it was founded or whatever. I couldn't get that info, but from Forbes, this is like the mission statement of Just Capital. Just Capital is a nonprofit research organization that seeks to provide all our society stakeholders, employees, concerned citizens, business leaders, and others with the information they need to assess how just companies are. Just is in all caps.
Right.
By providing the right knowledge and making it easy to access and understand, we believe capital will flow to corporations that are more just, ultimately leading to a balanced business world that takes into account human needs that are so often neglected today.
So fucking twisted.
If you go to their board, some other people that are on there is Abigail Disney, who's the like,
man.
the she's the heir, one of the heirs to the Disney fortune, who's like always talking about how capitalism is bad or whatever, while still reaping the benefits from it. Ariana Huffington.
Yeah.
And then, Chris, I think you'd like this, Deepak Chopra.
Okay, I do. I dig it, yeah.
It's on the board. Yeah. So anyway, so that's like, this is the kind of shit that he's doing, you know, in this kind of like in between, you know, like resuscitation of his career period. By the way, I happened to look at Just Capital, you know, like what do they actually do day to day? They do like polling and bullshit analysis. Again, this kind of like meaningless nothing that then people can use to bolster whatever political point they're trying to make. The first article, though, when you go to Just Capital, under News and Insights, I'm just going to read the headline here. The Just Report. How will stakeholder capitalism fare under a Biden administration?
Gonna be fine.
Right. I just thought that was amusing. Yeah. You know, play the laugh track after I said that.
Yeah.
Okay, so speaking of, you know, everything he's done essentially in the actual political arena, he's been a failure at. He's gone through a number of things, and he's trying to resuscitate his career. Speaking of failures, in 2019, he gets tapped by a potential Democratic candidate who we've covered on the show, who's going for a 2020 run. And I wanted to throw it out to a guess. You got one guess each. Think of like the biggest fucking loser. Again, in keeping with this guy's life.
It's not. I mean, it's not.
Is it Delaney? Is it
it's not our golden boy.
It's not Delaney.
Is it Bloomberg?
It's not Bloomberg.
Hickenlooper. I could see Hickenlooper.
Howard Schultz.
Oh, that's
He gets tapped to be the like the comms guy or whatever for Howard Schultz 2019 short-lived bid for the
coffee man
thing. And I think it's interesting because it's basically that's the timeline where right after that flops and Schultz is like, okay, I'm not going to run. it's in late 2019 that the Lincoln Project is founded.
Right.
And of course, Schmidt is not the only person. I'm not insinuating it's a direct Schultz to Lincoln pipeline or whatever. But it just shows that it's just a moving from one failing thing to another.
Yeah.
And so I kept looking at this and I couldn't believe, and you look at this guy and he's rich, as contrite or whatever he wants to pretend that he is about the decisions he's made. Like, he's obviously like wealthy and he's had all these job opportunities and he had a lot of them without even having like a college degree. Like, how the fuck did it happen? Was he just like really active in like the young college Republicans or whatever? And so you may have noticed that I didn't mention who his parents were at the beginning. His mom was a school teacher, but his dad was a telecommunications executive. His dad, who's also named Steve Schmidt, worked at a bunch of different telecom firms, including some international in Lebanon and stuff throughout his life. And then he became the director of Verizon.
No fucking way.
A position which then he retired from in 2002. And then later, his dad went to run, successfully I might add, in the New Hampshire House of Representatives, landing a spot as a Republican that he held in the New Hampshire House of Representatives from 2010 to 2018, which is also, by the way, the same year that apparently Steve Schmidt Jr. or whatever had his moment of like, Trump is a bad guy. So anyway, the reason why I brought up that last point, to circle back around to like the idea of like, like, who are these guys? Why do they matter or whatever? Most of these guys are like backgrounded guys, but at the end of the day, like, a guy like this can continually fail upwards his entire life because he comes from money. Maybe not like a billionaire's son, but certainly like a very like wealthy, privileged kid. How do you think he got a communication job? Is it because he had a rich Republican dad who had worked in all these companies and was like, I do communications. My son, he could do communications. like there's literally no other qualification. And again, anything from any moment in his career, he failed continuously. Like, there should be no like, even from just like an apolitical like punditry level, right? Like, why would we want to hear from somebody who's fucking lost every campaign that they really ran? Like, why would that be insightful or interesting?
The Lincoln Project itself, I mean, Biden might have won, but like, as you know, I mean, like, their part in the campaign was not effective. I mean, it was a bunch of money. It was $67 million that got burned up that could have been spent on like actual political organizing or like literally anything else other than what these fucking assholes did with it.
Under our iteration of socialism, we should all live with the level of dignity as if we have a rich Republican dad.
Yeah.
I mean, as you pointed out, Chris, in the intro, right? Like literally a collection of losers. Like, most of them are, like, they're not like hotshot Republican guys, which then...
No, they're not particularly talented or charismatic or anything.
Which then, if you think about in terms of, like, motivation, right? Why is it that none of the, like, really successful Republican operatives defected? Is it because they continued to get money from the Republican Party? Why did the losers defect and say, we're gonna make a stand? Is it because they could no longer get a job as a Republican fucking strategist?
It's a continuation of the grift, but just in a different iteration. And frankly, mainstream liberals love
the redemption story.
Yeah,
and
exactly. Yeah,
especially of like these completely milquetoast, non-charismatic guys,
non-threatening, but also non-threatening.
Right.
Also non-threatening. I mean, they're not. These guys aren't like a bombastic. These guys aren't like a Sean Hannity or an Alex Jones or a Cernovich or a Ben Shapiro even. You know what I'm saying? Like, these are just like boring, just milquetoast, just average Republican losers,
Steve Schmidt is the bullet, but he's like the bullet from Super Mario 3 where you could like jump on it and it would go.
He's similarly shaped.
Wow. I had no idea that Steve Schmidt was that. Oh, wow.
That much of a fucking loser.
Can you imagine? You know what the really fucking sad thing is too? He can say that Woody fucking Harrelson played him in a movie.
Right. He can be like, I'm friends with.
He doesn't deserve that.
He
doesn't deserve that at all. No.
And of course now, like all the other Lincoln Project guys, like he's a little less active on Twitter than, you know, the guy we're hopefully going to get into next. But like, you know, like his bio is like on Twitter is like, patriotism means to stand by the country. It does not mean to stand by the president. It's a Teddy Roosevelt quote.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, it's like
Thank
all
you,
this
sir.
like really lame fucking.
I'm saluting both hands.
You know, like
Both hands, I'm saluting.
Faux patriotism.
2-hand salute.
Yeah.
Bullshit. And you can tell then again throughout his entire career, you know, it's been said already, but like that hypocrisy of like, on the one hand, he's probably interpersonally a quote unquote moderate Republican, in which like, in the sense that like he doesn't want to like kill gay people because his like fucking sister is one. And like, okay, that's good or fine. Maybe he's like a nice person interpersonally, but ultimately at the end of the day, he has a hand in creating the specific genre of politics that Trump then capitalized on. And so any amount of him being like, I'm sorry, like, what the fuck is that?
No. Again, he should be in The Hague just for working on a 2004 Bush run.
Right. I mean, he was Cheney's guy. Like, how evil can you be?
Hague.
Like,
Hague, immediately.
he's the banality of evil, you know? Like,
Yes.
if Cheney is
Yes.
just evil,
Yes.
Steve Schmidt, the
Yeah.
butterball
The
turkey
fucking-
bullet.
Whatever fucking bureaucracy is
Yeah.
under Dick Cheney.
Yeah.
Just the machinations of fucking pure evil.
Yeah.
All right. So,
Hit us with it, man.
okay. So, I mean,
Dick Wilson.
fucking
Dick Wilson?
fucking
Was
Rick
that
Wilson,
intentional?
man.
Yeah.
Tricky Rick.
Tricky Rick. I mean, what are you gonna say? Like I said, I mean, this guy, this is another Cheney guy. He was a Cheney guy when Cheney was like a Secretary of Defense.
Jesus.
Oh, man,
Maybe-
that's like deep Cheney.
That's so bad.
Right. So yeah. So this was like he was a Department of Defense guy during like George H.W. Bush administration under Dick Cheney, and then like in 1994 he joins a media firm. Like I said earlier, he makes ads for Rudy Giuliani's like 1997 run for re-election as New York City mayor. In 2000, I didn't know this. This was a surprise to me. In 2002, I remember this ad. You probably do too. Do you remember the Saxby Chambliss ad against Max Cleland in Georgia? You remember the ad? Like Max Cleland was the Democrat. He was a Vietnam veteran. He lost both arms and one leg in Vietnam, and
Wow.
yeah, and like they ran this ad against him in like the 2002 Senate campaign, like basically like Max Cleland is a pussy and unpatriotic.
Oh
I mean, it was
my
like that.
God,
It was really
dude.
like that sort of thing. Like they like showed him, like they had a picture of him with like next to like Saddam Hussein and Osama bin Laden, and it was like this whole, it was like the Swift boat type thing.
Wow.
That
Right,
they did to John Kerry to like you know fundamentally question his patriotism and all this sort of stuff. It's like, I don't know what you want to say, but the guy fucking left 3 limbs in Vietnam. I mean, you can't question all this sort of stuff.
That's the same line of attack they use against Trump with like disrespecting veterans or whatever.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
Oh.
Yes. So that was a Rick Wilson joint. and and so I mean the guy has not done a whole lot of note since then, other than be like a writer. You know, he writes for the Daily Beast, Politico. He's written for the Federalist. You know, he became like a big like talking head in like the media circuit, like I was saying earlier, like MSNBC in 2015, 2016.
Right.
He really established himself as like an anti-Trump Republican, and like all through the Trump administration has like continued that. And like again, like you were just saying, with these like attacks on, you know, like cadet bone spurs and like Donald Trump was a draft dodger, all this sort of stuff that was true, but it's the same sort of line of attack, like you were saying, that they did against Max Cleland in Georgia in 2002. And so somehow, because they've done the same fucking thing to Bill Kristol, they're doing the same thing to George Bush, like they rehabilitate these people, and like as long as they're anti-Trump, that's all they care about. That's all that matters, as long as, and even if their only disagreement with Trump is like in, you know, style, or, you know, not even substance, but style, and like the way he presents himself, and he's a bit too vulgar and he's a bit too coarse, and you know, and we don't like him. He doesn't represent our party, and like maybe we just want to read through a few of these because like a lot of people have been digging up Rick Wilson's old tweets.
Oh, dude,
you know,
you
like
hit us.
recently, and it like is much like literally everything Rick Wilson tweeted before 2016 is like Al Sharpton on TV race baiting about Trayvon Martin again. Oh, and by the way, Obama eats dogs, and that's like literally every one of his tweets is like that. He's got. I'll just go through a couple of them here to give you like again the kind of guy that Rick Wilson really is. It's really really pretty incredible that he hasn't deleted any of this stuff. He's got like probably 15 or 20 tweets about Obama eating dog. Here's one of them from 2015.
Are you serious?
Yeah, here's one of them from 2015. I don't know if you know this, but Obama ate dog. The Koreans are giving up eating dog meat. CC at Barack Obama. He like tagged Barack Obama in it.
What?
Here's one. This is 2016. Here's one from 2016. Obama hears the words "goat fired dog" and clears his lunch schedule. Here's one I found the other day. This is from 2011. I am with the aged elder, my 94-year-old grandmother. She wants a cocktail. Her description of Obama is ... colorful.
Oh, come on.
Yeah,
Come on.
One can only
Christ.
imagine. So I mean, there's several more dog eating tweets. If you like search Rick Wilson's tweets for Al Sharpton, like I showed this to you guys the other day, he's got
Brutal.
He complained. He did a tweet like weekly about Al Sharpton on Twitter for like 6 years, just bitching and whining and like very, very obviously racist ways.
Yes.
But and I thought it was odd. And I remember I shared this with you guys because like I noticed that he tweeted about Al Sharpton incessantly for years, and then all of a sudden in September 2015 he stopped and he's never tweeted about him again. He's never mentioned his name once ever, and it's very strange. And I was trying to I wondered if that was if that corresponded with when Al Sharpton got his MSNBC show. It doesn't, but it does correspond with when he got his weekly Sunday show. I'm not sure if it means anything. It's weird. I don't know.
No way.
I don't know how to explain it. I don't know if he was already seeing Trump on the horizon and hedging his bets a little bit. And that was when he became maybe an MSNBC contributor himself. And he's I can't attack this guy anymore.
Right.
Even though I'm racist and I really want to. So he had a bunch of funny tweets about Joe Biden, about how Joe Biden lacks basic message discipline. He tweeted a bunch of very true,
true,
very accurate things about Joe Biden when he was an anti-Obama guy. Oh, he's got a bunch of Jesse Jackson tweets as well. He's got a ton of Muslim tweets. You search his tweets for Muslim or Islam, and you're gonna be going on for a while there. Here's one of the big ones. He said, "Here's the deal." This is from December 14th, 2014. He said, "Here's the deal. I don't care what flavor of," or he says, "or," I'm sure he meant of. He says, "I don't care what flavor of Islam these dicks are. The flavor the need to be is bleeding out of a hole in their temple."
Oh, God.
What the fuck?
Yeah. So he's got,
This is who liberals are celebrating.
Right, yeah, he's got literally over 100.
Yeah.
No exaggeration tweets like this about making jokes about Muslims and he's got fucking dozens of jokes about bomb vests and suicide bombers and all sorts of stuff. Here's another one. He says, "Let me get this right. We're expected to constantly apologize for slavery, racism, American Indians, and disco. Muslims, nothing."
What?
I mean, that's explicitly white supremacist, white grievance
Yes.
politics.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And so, yeah, I don't exactly know.
Fuck.
I don't exactly know.
Liberals gave this dude millions of fucking dollars, dude.
Yeah.
Well, I think the obvious thing to point out here, but it's still worth stating, is that every single criticism that the Lincoln Project supposedly has of Trump in terms of we disagree with his messaging, we disagree with the way that he conducts himself, his lack of etiquette or candor, right, is either the direct result of them working in that field to create the politics in which that is ascendant, or in the case of Rick Wilson, that's just literally who he is.
Yeah.
He's just a fucking racist.
Right,
Yeah.
and the way you were saying, Chris, it's it's not even he's articulating this in some kind of grand strategy, vision, or ideological Nazi thing. He's just making jokes, which is what Trump does. It's exactly what fucking Trump does.
Right. Yeah. No, I think this is a good time to kind of put this all together and understand what the function of the Lincoln Project is
Yes.
what's the purpose of this project? Because it's not just obviously about, if we're reading into this, it's not obviously not just about like rehabilitating these handful of weirdo failed political strategists that are rich anyway. The thesis, I think, of the Lincoln Project is not to move moderate Republicans into the Democratic camp, but it is to move the Democrats to the right.
Right. Yeah. This is kind of what I said in the beginning. Like, this is really ultimately what their goal seems to be, when their stated goal is to peel away anti-Trump Republicans. I mean, really, they're hedging their bets in a sort of way, because they've got like two options. Like, we can run ads or run a campaign against Trump, and then if Trump wins again, well, at least we'll still have established ourselves as opposition to Trump, and we can continue this fucking grift for another 4 years. But if Trump loses, then we have then ingratiated ourselves to the Biden campaign. And not only that, but MSNBC, CNN, I've seen people on TV like Jake Tapper congratulate the Lincoln Project for the success of their ads. I mean, they've set themselves up to probably get themselves at least advisory positions in the Biden administration. But not only that, to like you were saying, to remake as the Republican Party just continues to go right, to sort of remake the Democratic Party in the image of what the Republicans were 12 years ago. like when John McCain, not even long ago, not even that long. Yeah, like if Mitt Romney had run in 2012 is like what they the kind of vision they have. That's what they want to see.
And just as a last thing to present here too, from this Daily Poster article from Dave Sirota, Andrew Perez, and Julia Rock, they have, and I'm just going to read this here. GOP operatives at the Lincoln Project and the Republican voters against Trump raised at least $77 million. Oh,
it's even more than I thought.
This election cycle, much of it from cable news watching liberals for anti-Trump television ads. And then the next thing that they go into, and I'll just briefly read the paragraph. Data shows Lincoln Project ads were often ineffective. During the elections, online panels of viewers using the civil analytics platform judged ads by candidates' prominent third-party groups on a month-by-month basis. That data, compiled by Open Labs, was widely shared with Democratic-aligned third-party groups to evaluate the effectiveness of them. And what it says is these did shit. These did bullshit. I love this. One of the weakest testing Lincoln Project ads was a media-touted spot that accused Trump of being too soft on China.
Yes.
And an ad that envisioned Mexico's border wall lined with the coffins of coronavirus victims performed worse than all but 4 of the Democratic ads tested in August.
Another one that happened this year that was one of the Lincoln Project ads was attacking Trump supporters and like showing images of the Confederate flag displayed in a negative light. But then what resurfaced then, I forgot to mention this earlier, you've probably seen the pictures of fucking Rick Wilson's 2012 Instagram post of where he's on his fucking pontoon boat with his cooler with a Confederate flag on it that says the South will rise again.
No way.
Yeah. So he deleted that one. He hasn't deleted any of the tweets.
There's another ad where it's it came out in the wake of the that whole Russia is paying for bounties on American soldiers thing. And they had, it was some vet that they had, and it was a talking head type thing. And the whole crux of the ad was the vet was if I heard that, I would want to go and fucking kick some Russian ass. And the fact that the president and again, it was just all framed in this way of the problems that they have with Trump ultimately on a real political level is in their mind. It's he doesn't want to start a war with Russia, he doesn't want to start a war with China. What a despicable Republican that he doesn't want to initiate World War III.
He didn't murder farmers in Vietnam.
Yeah.
He dodged the draft like a coward.
There's, maybe, and towards wrapping this up, there's a concept in the kind of academic literature on political communication that I've been privy to, which is it's this idea of a conversion narrative. Because way back when in I think in 1972 there was Democrats for Nixon, who it was a similar kind of attempt to create ads or whatever, a political action group that was hey, we're Democrats, but we're like voting for Nixon, and here are the reasons why. And so this idea of the conversion narrative, right? Like, it only works if the conversion is seen as credible and the person is seen as credible. And part of that idea of credibility, right? Because this is like a, sort of a strategic communication concept that's used in a lot of like, designing of political ads. Like if you want to like convince somebody of something else, right? Obviously, on the surface, it has a powerful idea. Like, if you can be like, hey, I converted. I used to be the way you guys were thinking. Now I think something else. But part of that, in terms of, its effectiveness, is, again, it has to build credibility. And the main way that it does that is that it demonstrates that the person who's claiming they've done the conversion has something to lose. Right? So, like, if I come to you and I'm like, hey, I was part of this community, I like you were, I really was, and now I've seen the light, I've seen something totally different. You're establishing that credibility by proving, like, I've severed my ties with that community.
Wow.
I've lost all of the social and, economic, productive support that I had from that community because I've left them, because my conviction is so strong about this idea. And now I've changed. And so in a simpler way, right, the idea is that like a conversion narrative works if somebody has something to lose. What do any of these fucking losers at the Lincoln Project have to lose by hitching themselves onto this? Nothing.
Oh.
And what do they have to gain? Quite a lot.
So much.
Which not only speaks again to the general hypocrisy of or the motivating factor behind them doing this fucking stupid idea, but also, like, in terms of its effectiveness, I think this is part of the reason why, like, they didn't fucking move the needle at all in terms of the election. Because anybody who's, like, a Republican is gonna look at that and be like, why would I believe these guys? Like, what are the values that I would have that I would, like, share with these people? And it didn't work, and it's just a fucking grift to either push the Democratic Party rightward or just to scam a bunch of money and be like, hey, we're now gonna have rich media careers.
Or both.
Why not both?
Think about what progressive candidates could have done with $77 million.
Yeah.
Think about what I could have done with $77 million.
You know what I'm saying? Like, what they're trying to measure is whether or not it was effective in having, Republicans vote for Biden. But it's not what it should be measuring is what I think the actual project is, which is to normalize, rehabilitate neoconservatives. Normalize conservatism as a valid ideology that has value going forward.
Yeah, and also the larger, rehabilitation of the Bush and that sort of stuff, like the Bush era. Like, these guys have to rehabilitate Bush because then they can all be rehabilitated as well. But yeah, I mean, like, as far as like that money, man, like what all could have been done as far as like actual like political activism. Like, if that money had gone to like absolutely anything else, when it was like a quantifiable failure, like Biden may have won, but not with a mandate. I mean, he did not take a bite out of Trump's base. Trump got more votes in 2020 than he did in 2016. Like I said, the Democrats lost votes in the House. They did not pick up a Senate majority. I mean, it was really an utter failure across the board.
Another way to think about that money, to return to a bit that we haven't done on the show in a while, is like 77 million is what, like 1.5 Flint, Michigans?
Yeah. Yeah, like literally on the money. Fuck, what a joke, dude. What a joke. It's so embarrassing.
I mean, especially at a time like with COVID going on, and there's so much like human suffering going on in this country, with people getting evicted and people like being in line at food banks and all sorts of stuff, and people being homeless. Like there's so many things that money could have gone to, other than to fucking line the pockets of a bunch of fucking like Bush era rejects.
Failed fucking.
But again, personally failed. But again, I look at a guy like George Conway and I can't help but look at him and think this guy understands what this larger project is about. And frankly, the Lincoln Project has been, if you look at it in that terms, I'm sad to say this, but they've been very fucking successful.
Sure.
I look at a guy like Abraham Lincoln and I can't help but think that he got his head blown off by John Wilkes Booth. That's just a historical fact.
It's true, man.
You thought you wouldn't learn anything from this show, but there you go.
That's it.
That's it.
It's such a
that's
shame.
the show.
There's so many other founders to it, but like, I thought that these three were exemplary of kind of, as they were the major founders.
Yeah, there's like there's 9 founders, and then there's like 12 other people that are listed on their site as like major people. Most of them are the same bullshit, same kind of lame, nothing track record.
But again, if you're listening and you have parents or something like that enjoy the ads and stuff or whatever, or think about donating, just scream at them. Just like, not even anything intelligible. I mean, just like a guttural fucking primal yell in their face.
And it's because there is no other reaction to that. It's so frustrating. Like, I see people like liberal, like fucking like blue wave Deborah, whatever, fucking like still with her, hashtag still with her, like on Twitter, like, well, people are allowed to change. Like 4 years ago, he was posting about Obama eating dogs.
Right.
He hasn't changed. He hasn't changed. He hasn't had a change of heart.
No, these people do not have a valid ideology. Like they just straight up, they are rehabilitating an ideology that is not valid.
Yeah.
It's not right.
Anyway, and end of story. All the founders of the Lincoln Project, agents of capital. How about we all do a stay cool at once, and then that'll be the actual
1, 2, 3. Stay cool.
Stay cool, folks.
I missed it.
One more time. We got this.
Okay.
I'm just stopping it.
What are we doing? Oh, we're stopping?
No. 3, 2, 1.
3, 2, 1.
Stay cool, folks.
Stay cool, folks.
And take Rick Wilson to Ford's Theater. Goodbye. My American Cousin. It's a very good play.
Goodbye.
I hope the Starr investigation goes on forever, but just in case it doesn't, I'm looking for a little bit of work. Now that everybody hates lawyers, pollsters, pundits, I don't know what the hell to do. I've got the pundit blues. I've got the pundit blues. All year I've kept the pace. On TV took my place. Lots of makeup on my face and sexy dress of lace. Said the president's a big disgrace. Insist Paula had a case. Chatted about the disaffected base. But now I've got the pundit blues. Kosovo now tops the news. Only guy in my life is Chris Matthews. I've got the pundit blues. Newt left for Georgia on the midnight train. House Republicans made no gains. Lead story now is Saddam Hussein. And I don't know nothing about that. But they'll still invite me to chat. As long as I'm blonde and not too fat. I've got the pundit blues. I've got the pundit blues. Read the Starr report, and all I could find is that Clinton's sex life is better than mine. With impeachment now dead, and Rivera still alive, how's a lowly pundit gonna survive? On rice cakes and quotes in the Washington Times, I've got the pundit blue. Now wait just a minute. No reason to sob. I'm different from the other pundits. I have a day job. Thank you very much. Good night.